Hello, everyone. How are we today? Are we doing well? Yes? Good? Good. I see a 2 thumbs up. I like that a lot. Well, my name is Andy Ortiz, and I am a reporter with TheWrap. I am also the co-host of Rap Women's Unwrapped podcast, and today I am your very happy moderator. And that came out sarcastic. It's really not. I'm excited to be here. This is our Women in Music panel. Thank you all for being here, and let's get it rolling. I am going to bring up my panelists. First up, we have Autumn Rowe. Let's bring her on up. We have Emery Franklin. Excuse me, I know how to say words. Sometimes R's just mess me up. Brooklyn Webb is also joining us. We have Jermaine Franco. And last but not least, we have Milk joining us as well. Ladies, come on up. Thank you. This is a good energy. I love this. Welcome, welcome, ladies. Yes, you all look so good. Thank you for being here today. This is a weird angle to lean on. I'm not totally confident this was supposed to be my chair, but I'm making it my chair. We are going to own it. So I like to start all of my interviews first just by asking, how are you? Genuinely, how are you? The world is a mess. It's on fire at all times. So I just want to know, how are you guys doing? Everybody good? Happy? Yes? Good. Hey, hanging in there.
I feel like an exposed nerve ending, you know?
Same. That is how I live my life. But you know what? We get through. I am so excited to be speaking to all you ladies today. You are all so incredibly talented. The amount of things I want to ask all of you individually could fill this whole time, but I have to get to all of you. So let's get into it. Autumn, I want to start with you because first and foremost, congratulations are in order. Ms. Grammy winner, let's give it up. Have you processed that Grammy winner goes in front of your name now? Is that like a thing that you've gotten used to? Do you ever get used to that?
I'm getting used to it. It was can I say a little bit about it?
Yes.
Okay.
I want you to say as much about it as you want.
The Grammy I won was for Album of the Year for John Batiste, We Are, and I won as a writer, producer, and artist. It made me the second Black woman to ever win for producer for Album of the Year.
Yes.
Thank you. But also, it made John the first Black artist to win Album of the Year in 14 years.
Wow.
And I think that says a lot about the music industry. What I really hope for this album was for it to inspire other creators to create music from their heart and create music with intention. Right now, how many of you guys are songwriters or producers or artists?
I see. Yeah.
Okay,
we got
one
some.
person. Well, if we reach Rome, we reach the world. So, like, basically, what I hope for this album was just that people create the music inside of them. Like right now, the industry is so reliant on algorithms, so reliant on AI, on things that do not mean human connection. And I feel like we're a little bit at this like battle of like, you know, what's real and what do we think people want for the market. And I think we need to keep our humanity, so.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious for you because obviously Grammy win, that's like a big bucket list. Like, I think that's probably the bucket list item for a lot of people. When you hit that Grammy win, obviously there's always the desire for more, but what's next for you? Like, what's the next dream? I think of Tangled, and they're like, you get to go find a new dream. And
EGOT.
EGOT, we got aspirations. Okay, I like this.
Yeah, I want to go further. I would love to get into film. I'm starting my own publishing company next year, working on TV development ideas. You know, the great thing about music and anything you become successful at is a door opener to do other things you want to do. Mm-hmm. So it was never my end game to be a songwriter, producer, and then stop. It was like, okay, we could hear, let's do more. I'm also really interested in philanthropy. I spend about 75% of my time on causes, pro-songwriter activism things. I'm a SONA board member, that's Songwriters of North America. I spend a lot of my time fighting for our rights for fair pay, advocating for women in music. So yeah, the more platform I have, the more change I could do, so.
Well, in case you haven't heard it lately, thank you for the work that you're doing, for fighting for that change and making that effort, because it's necessary. It's unfortunate that it's necessary, but it is necessary. Milk, I want to come to you next because obviously you know Autumn Rowe. If you missed it earlier, they performed together. They were stunning, just as stunning as they are now. But I mean, talk to me about working with Autumn, because music is always like a collaborative process, right? So how do you know when you found the right collaborator? What is that moment in your brain that's like, oh, we need to create together?
That's such a good question. So happy to be here. Hello, everyone. I would say that working with a great collaborator like Autumn is someone who has strengths that I don't have, or we kind of push each other to think differently than each other. We just did a song called We Won't Go Back, and she brought her style of music, and we had Ani DeFranco and Bianco and me. Each of us are from a different genre of music, but we had a similar vision of like a world where women can choose for their own bodies. And so that drove us, and it was such a enlightening process and also healing process to be with a bunch of other humans who cared and to create something so we could channel our hopes, our dreams, our anxieties, our grief into a piece of art, and it became very generative. During a destructive time, how can we construct? And we constructed together. So Autumn teaches me a lot to stand in my power and just to like allow myself to have this space to honor who I am, which is like a timeless gift. So
I love that. Autumn, that's a great thing to be teaching. And I mean, we're talking about collaborating. Emery, I want to come to you next. You have been mentored directly by none other than Sheryl Crow. That's just a very nice thing to carve on your tombstone, that you can go to the grave with that. But I would very much love to know what kind of impact she had on you, because I mean, we know who she is. She's a legend, but there's something that happens when you work with a legend that you kind of have to process, that like, okay, she is who she is, but we're also here to like work together. So just tell me about working with her. What kind of impact did she have on you? How did you kind of get past that, like, oh my God, it's her? How'd you do that?
I didn't.
I love it. I love the honesty.
The first 10 minutes of that conversation was me just like calming myself. But yes, Sheryl was my original inspiration to being a singer-songwriter. And when I got to sit down and talk to her, I took so many things away from it, but I think that the first one is that I think that we as artists, when we experience pain, our first thought is, how can I turn this into art? And then we put pressure on that. We think, okay, this meant a lot, I want to make this perfect. You get possessive of it a little bit, and then you're like, well, now I can't write about it because it has to be great. And what Sheryl told me is, she's like, don't fight it. Everything's going to come out in its own time. It might come out in a month, it might come out in 10 years, but it will come out and it will be perfect when it does. So taking the pressure off of making art. And then I think second, she told me that early in her career, when she was performing, she wanted the lights down. She didn't really want to see the audience. And then when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she wanted the lights up and she wanted to see the people. She wanted to see who she was connecting with. And she told me that at a certain point, what we do is not about us. It's about who we touch with our art, and to not give it, we're depriving the world of that. So, not to do that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, what fascinates me the most about music is I think it's a really brave art form, because you really are, you're telling your stories a lot of time. It is so personal. It's like Milk said earlier, we're just exposed nerves. You're an exposed nerve all the time, and you have to put it out there, and people just have to deal with it. How do you kind of grapple with that once it's out? Like once the process happens, it does what it needs to do, it is out in the world. What's the next step for you? Are you just like, it's out, it's done, I move on to the next thing? Do you look for the reactions? How do you kind of process people seeing your innermost thoughts, your story? How do you deal with putting that in front of the public eye?
I think that acting has helped me a lot with that, because as an actor, you're in service of a story, and it's a little more cut and dry because you're literally a different person with a different name and a different wardrobe and mannerisms. So when you're making it, you make it, and then you release it, and then it belongs to everyone else. And I think that with music, it's very similar, especially if you're writing from a very autobiographical point of view, it belongs to you. But there's been something about the flip in my brain where if I can release it with film, why can't I do the same with with music? And also like learning the hard way that not everyone's gonna like it. and that's okay. Not everyone has to like it. But it's also been really cool to see how something that I wrote that was specific to me means something totally different to somebody else, and it's just as important.
Yes, absolutely. I love this. Brooklyn, I want to come to you next because you've had a different road with your career so far. You just took the trolls like head on. You just got hateful comments. You're like, I'm going to run with this. I am fascinated by this. I think you might be an evil genius. I want to know the way, guys, if you don't know, Brooklyn Webb, she is an evil genius. But talk to me about how this plan comes into your brain. How do you, because like I see a mean comment about like, I'm moderating a panel. I see one mean comment on Twitter and I was like, I need to go to bed. I'm done. You have thousands of them and you're like, I'm going to use this to start a music career and we're just going to do it. How does this come into your brain? How do you find the strength to execute it? Just tell me this. Tell me the origins.
So for a while, kind of when I was starting social media, because I started posting pretty consistently when I was around 15 and then it turned into a full-time career by the time I was 16. And ever since then, it was just kind of always. In the comments, I noticed they never seemed to get nicer. The more successful that you got, the more mean they got, the more personal, the more deep it would cut. But I started to realize these are just people behind a screen. I had never once had someone come up to me in person and say the words that they're putting behind a screen. So then after a bit of it, I kind of got this idea because I noticed a lot of people on social media, what they would have happen with young creators specifically, no matter what kind of music they put out, what kind of message, no matter what, they would always just get attacked by people online ruthlessly to the point where it would make the music massive because people wanted to put their hateful energy into something. So I was like, what if I made a song that was just good enough to like make people think that it's serious, but also have it be silly to get their attention and have it be something fun. So I started working with my team and a bunch of incredible different writers and musicians and so many creatives to make this happen because I had a vision. I was like, I knew what I wanted to be, and it turned into a whole performance art project. And for me, that was kind of how that all came together.
Evil genius. I love it. Swear, it boggles the mind that you do that. And I am curious though, because as like you said, when you get more successful, it's not like the hate comments stop. They get worse. People are mean. The internet is a great place to be all the time. But I am curious how you look out for your own mental health, right? Because you goad these people on. You want to make something that's like, we're going to mess with them a little bit. But those words are still words that you see, and you still have to there's a part of you might internalize them, How do you look out for your mental health as you're doing this? How do you make sure that you don't let it get to you and you keep executing your vision?
I think the biggest thing for me, it's definitely been something that I've really struggled with over this past year specifically, because for a while I just ignored. I'd be like, this isn't true. Like, I just ignore it. But to a certain extent, you have to work and heal through your own mental health. But it was also realizing that with these comments and people online and all this stuff going on, that a lot of these people will never get to meet me in person, which means that they never truly know me or know who I am. So it was working through that and realizing like, hey, they don't actually know me. They just see as much as I'm putting myself online, it's still not actually getting to meet me. So they don't really know me. So them saying these comments doesn't really mean anything.
So you're an evil genius and you're like well-adjusted. It must be nice to live life like that. I am thrilled for you, Brooklyn, genuinely. Jermaine, I want to come to you next because I mentioned this before we got up here. I'm a big score nerd. I was a band kid in high school. I played flute in high school, and so I have always been obsessed with scores and Disney scores, especially. It's just my jam. You worked on Encanto and you worked on Coco, both beautiful stories. Magical stories. And obviously Disney is all about the magic. I want to know, where does the magic come from for you to create your scores? Where do you find that magic in yourself?
Okay, first I want to say thanks to everybody listening and to my panelists. I'm just in awe of you guys, just ladies, sorry, I said the wrong word. But for me, I just kind of get small, and I just sit on my piano and I tune everything out, and I sit and sing, and I play a lot of Bach and Debussy, and just get my head clear. I turn off all social media, the radio. I don't watch any news before I write, because I just want to just be present, and that's how it came to me.
you just have music flowing through you. That must just be a beautiful way to live. And also with Encanto, obviously it broke barriers because I believe here Disney Animation's first feature to be scored by a woman ever.
Wow.
Guys, I know everyone in this room has a favorite Disney animated movie. We all came up on them. So how do we get to a point where Encanto is the first one scored by a woman? Like, what did that mean to you? Did you realize that when it happened? Like, did you know you were going to be breaking that barrier?
I didn't think about it. I just went and dove off the cliff because I didn't want to get hung up on the first thing because it's a little intimidating to think about all those things. So what I did was just dove into the music of Colombia, and I just listened. And it was all during the pandemic, by the way. The whole film was made during the pandemic. So lots of Zoom meetings. Nobody was meeting in person until the very end. And I didn't even meet Lynn till the premiere. So basically, I just feel that we just have to, be strong within ourselves, and then we can. The rest of it, you just radiate what your perspective is through your life experiences, through your cultural references, through your memories, and then you put it in a song or a score. And people are gonna, like you said, like it or not. But this was a big project, so there was a lot of executive notes, a lot of meetings, lots of, you have to learn at that, as if you're doing a score on that level for a studio film, you have to learn to take criticism and notes, and as an artist, that can be tricky. So that's part of the process, and not always taking it personally if someone says that's not working, because the one cue when Antonio is walking up to get his gift and open the door, I actually worked on that for more than 6 months. Like, I literally wrote it, and I thought it should be beautiful. So they were like, that's really beautiful, but there's no tension there. And I was like, I have to write it again. So then you have to be willing to go back and revise your work and continually respond to the creatives in this field. And so I do that, and I just keep myself solid through swimming and, meditation and practicing and walking, and just keep going, because as you said, the world's a mess. There's a lot of things going on, especially against women. And so I didn't want to think every day, I'm the first woman to do this. All I thought was, I want to do the best job I possibly can. And that was kind of my mantra.
It is a beautiful score. We're all obsessed with Encanto. And I know that because We Don't Talk About Bruno was everywhere for a long time, which is different than the score, but it's still Encanto. I want to come back to you because we're talking about, Jermaine saying put in your personal experiences and your history, but also you've worked with a lot of people. You've worked with Jon Batiste, who we love. I'm so curious from a songwriting standpoint, when you're working with someone else, how do you find the correct balance of voices? Is it a balance of voices when you're writing a song that someone else is going to sing? Do you need to be contemplating that with their voice in your head? That feels like it would be a challenge. Tell me about this aspect of the industry.
So I write two ways. One way, I either write my story, my truth, so whatever I write has to be real. So it's either something I personally experienced, or I'm writing with the artist. And for me, I like doing something called what I call identity records. So a lot of music on the radio is interchangeable. And by that, you hear a song, you're like, oh, but if you think about it, a million people could have sang that song, right? Which is awesome, but my favorite kind of music to write is the kind that only that artist would have sang that song. Like, only Gwen Stefani would have done Holler Back Girl, right? Like, there's so many songs but those are artists that stick around and that you love those artists. So I love creating those types of really personal records, you remind me of something, like I wrote a song called Swagger Jagger a long time ago for this girl named Cheryl Lloyd. And
like we weren't jamming out to that for a lot. We know this song, Autumn. I know what you're talking about. The way that just wakened a core memory in me was a trip.
But that was, about her story. So I love to tell other people's stories. So like, honestly, like if a session is 6 hours, I will spend 4 hours talking and getting to know the artist and spending that time, because songs write themselves once we know what we're talking about. But we need to take that time to figure out what's this about, what's the message, why are we here today, and gaining that trust to let me in to tell those stories. So it reminded me of that, because she told me a story, like people were coming to this girl's show, she was like 17, peeing in bottles and throwing them at her.
No.
Yes, 17 years old. People were doing terrible things to her, and she was being bullied like I've never seen. And this was like 10 years ago. And so I'm like, well, let's just write about it, and address it head on. And that's kind of where the song came from. So it's all different. If I'm writing with John, we're clearly not going to write Swagger Jagger, So like, if it's Dua Lipa, it's a different energy. It's very personal. It's very catered. It's not about me. It's about getting the best out of the artist every time.
I would kill for a John Batiste cover of Swagger Jagger. I just want to take a moment and imagine what that would be like, because it would be a trip. That's such a vulnerable process, though, to kind of let yourself be that way with people. And Emery, I feel like you can speak to that, because your style, super, it's all about you. And to give people that came out terribly. I don't mean it as an insult. I mean it in the best way. But you have to trust other people when you're collaborating. You have to trust other people with your story. And you kind of have to potentially separate yourself from it. But is it even possible to separate yourself from it? Like when you write these, is there any kind of disconnect that happens eventually? How do you trust someone? How do you work with someone, collaborate, and be like, okay, you can help me tell my story?
That's a great question. I think that when I was younger, it was harder because I was pretty isolated. I didn't have collaborators available. So the only thing I knew was to write from my heart and from my experiences. And then as I got older and kind of went through the school of hard knocks with people who didn't understand what I was trying to say and did run away with a vision that wasn't mine, and I wasn't empowered as a young girl to say that's not what I want, I become very protective over who I collaborate as I get older. And I think that I really resonate with what you said about you got to talk to people. You have to see if you have chemistry. And sometimes I won't even take rights now unless we have coffee first. Or producers, you're producing my song. I want to make sure that I like what you've done and that we have the same idea. And I think that we're talking about, empowering women in music. Younger artists, like it's okay to say, I want to make sure that this creation is in good hands.
Absolutely. Milk, I'm so curious to your perspective on this as well, being a songwriter as well. What is, in crafting this, in collaborating with someone new, maybe in doing something for yourself, what is the most challenging stage? Does it differ depending on what artist you're with? Does it differ depending on what you're making? But like, what is the challenge, the hurdle that is always there, if there is a hurdle that is always there?
I would say the most important thing is like what Autumn was saying, is like getting on the same page and having that gut instinct, like, yes, this is what we want to write about. And so we could meander. A lot of times, like, we'll write doula songs, is what I call them. Like, we'll have an idea and we think it's the idea and we start writing it, but it births a whole other song. So then it's learning how to, I think one of the advanced skills of songwriting is learning when to know you need to let something go and then to pursue something, right? Yeah, or like learning when to stick to a concept when others are questioning. I think the studio is a really beautiful manifestation of being able to claim our truths and have people witness us honoring our truths. And so like I really relate to what you were saying about your journey of maybe sometimes like not being able to hold on to our originality because of other influences. I have found the studio to be such a beautiful place for me to test my courage in advocating for myself. Am I going to abandon my sense of artistry to please this other person in the room, or am I going to stand within myself and have to dare to say no. So I used to walk into studios as a joke because I acknowledged my fear of saying no to others, like when I was younger. So I'd walk into the studio, I was like, I have an issue saying no, so I'm just gonna say no to you right now before I even like met them, or like, and they're like, cool. So like it was just out in the open, so it was just clear. So I gave myself permission to do that, and so that's a hard one.
And I think that's so important to be in any situation, to be able to stand up for what you want, and especially when you're creating something. To say, I mean, when I write, obviously I write very different things than you guys, but it's hard. It's a moment where you have to be like, okay, this is not what I want. Thank you. I respect you. I value what you're giving me, this input, but this is what I want to do. Jermaine, I'm so curious how you handle that, because you mentioned that it was learning to take criticisms, but also there's got to be a time when you say, no, I'm not going to budge on this one. I want this to stay the same. How did you arrive at a place where you could do that?
Well, I think it takes a lot of practice of being in so many meetings with people. And I want to say that another person that was somewhat mentor was Hans Zimmer to me. And I was in the room with him and John Powell working on Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2. And I would watch them and both of them, how they managed the executives and the directors and the creatives, and how they managed to almost like sell their ideas, because you're presenting, this is my theme, what do you think of the theme? Here's this theme for, Mirabelle when she's quirky, what do you think of that? So you have to have really great demos. In my job, your demos have to be amazing so that you're selling the idea of your music, not just here's a little piano, oh, it's kind of gonna go like that. No, you have to technologically, you have to be really adept.
It has to be like fully formed.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the orchestra, I've mocked that up. I've played that myself with the string sounds and all of those. I mean, except certain parts, I have to orchestrate. So I have to be strong that, okay, what I'm putting on the table as my theme or my demo is something that I actually believe in. So I always say, don't put a half-baked, what we call cues. A cue is one of the pieces of music of the score. Don't put a half-baked cue up, because you won't sell it. You have to have your idea fully thought out and explain, yes, it's gonna go like this because, and how do you get to that way? You just practice doing it, and sometimes you're gonna get pushback, and you're gonna have a director that likes it, the producer doesn't. So you have to kind of figure out how to try and manage that. And other times you can say, no, I think it should go this way, and other times it's let me do it again. And I have to be flexible, and I have to learn how to serve the picture, because this is what I'm doing. And as a score, it's about the narrative and the storytelling, and it's not just about, oh, I want my piece of music because I think I like it here. No, the director the music is telling a story on the screen, and I have to support that.
I really want to know what working with Hans Zimmer is like. Hans Zimmer, my God, also a genius. The Pirates scores guy, the Pirates of the Caribbean scores, Lion King, that man is a genius. He is. I hate to be that person that's like, what's it like working with this, but what's it like working with Hans Zimmer?
Well, I mean, when I worked alongside him, I was an assistant to my number one mentor, is John Powell. And he was always very open and not too serious, which I think is important. Sometimes we're like so serious trying to get our careers off, that we're not realizing that, this is music. Music should be, and we should have some levity to it too. And, I watched him I was a producer of part of his score to Kung Fu Panda 3 with Lang Lang. And they just got, I was there, and Hans is, playing around, and here, try this, Lang Lang, and he's playing it, and just the point of why I made it was, one of the people in his circle said to me, Jermaine, if you're gonna be in the room, be in the room. And that's really important, to have a point of view and to have your musical idea, and that's how you sell it to the directors and the studio, is that you've done your homework. You've tried the theme 5 different, 10 different, 20 different ways, and this is the one you came up with that you think is the best.
And you know it's the best. Not necessarily, I mean, you think, but also you have to have that confidence in yourself, which confidence is hard in any given situation. Brooklyn, I want to come back to you. I'm so curious about the TikTok aspect of things and the music industry right now. It is fascinating to me watching people launch music careers on TikTok because it's a little 30, 40-second snippet. I'm just curious on your perspective, what has it been like being a part of that? Like knowing that you could use TikTok in this way. I need to figure out how to form the actual question I'm asking you here. The words went right out. I promise I have a point. But curious for your perspective on how TikTok has influenced the music industry at this point.
Yeah, TikTok has really changed the game, I feel like, in a lot of different ways, both positive and negative, because now anyone can pick up this app and be able to get a whole new audience to look at what they're creating. So it's hard because it's also not always fair and it doesn't always value art. Sometimes it's really catering to this classic kind of music that people hear all the time. Like that was the whole basis behind my song and my project that I did, was what kind of bubblegum pop, like most kind of bland but also kind of silly song could we create here? And it's really just, TikTok has influenced it in so much, in so many different ways, because you never know what you're gonna get on there. You can get the most beautiful song to be blown up by an incredibly talented artist, or you can get something silly that was made on GarageBand, or even just from an artist who's working out of their house that maybe doesn't have the opportunities to be in a studio with other writers creating stuff, but has pure talent. And it's really beautiful that you're able to get discovered in that way.
That has to be exciting to know that in any given video this could take off for you.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating too sometimes, because people will be putting out this content and it takes time, because sometimes it's literally just that one video, that one time. You can put out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, but it's that one video sometimes that happens that makes it go viral and starts this moment. Or sometimes you have that one video and then it's, okay, what do I do with this after, and the push after? Because it's a different journey for everyone. There's not a rule book to going through TikTok or social media in general.
I just think it's so cool. I love seeing new artists now. And it's not even necessarily new artists. There are artists on there that like I've loved for a long time. And I'm like, oh, you guys know who Dove Cameron is now because she was trending. Like she's incredible. And so it's fascinating to watch. Autumn, I'm curious for, I was gonna say.
Let's go.
Let me give you your input.
Let's talk about TikTok. I gotta say,
because you brought up the algorithms. Let's do it.
I was like, okay, the problem with TikTok for people like me, so we don't make any money from TikTok. You know, my friend wrote he wrote a song called Fancy Like for Walker Hayes, with Walker Hayes, which one of the biggest songs of like last year. He's made no money. You know, I had a viral hit this year with a song called Happiness. That was the TikTok trend of like things people say to you, and it was people doing this dance with the strobe lighting. That was a song I wrote 12 years ago. I would probably make $10 from this. You know, like that's the problem people on my end are having with TikTok. It's like, someone hit me the other day. She was like, oh, I was listening to these old songs we wrote. I just want to release them on TikTok. I was like, please don't do that. Please don't do that, because what you're doing is devaluing the work. Because we won't ever monetize from that. It's building your brand, but taking away from what I do. I can't make any money from that. The only way we can make money from that as songwriters is if that then, because that song takes off, it then maybe takes off on iTunes or gets radio play. But TikTok itself is not helpful towards the behind the scenes people. So we need to figure out a way where we can also fairly monetize in building other people's brands.
Of course, and I'm not going to be like, so what is the answer? What is the way? But I mean, if you were, let's say you were in that meeting, you were spitballing ideas, what would be potentially a good way? Like, what do you envision kind of the future of TikTok and, songwriters and launching artists looking like?
The future, well, what really needs to happen is that the licenses need to be fair, and music needs to not be seen as something that just tech companies can use as a disposable thing, but that it has its intellectual property, and that it it's valued, and there's a license for how much, and that we also have the authority as creators to approve that license, which we don't have that right. So there's a lot of things that are not in our favor right now, which I'm actively trying to fix. But it's very complicated. Unfortunately, like, the creators are often the afterthought, and technology and tech people are first, and we're never in those conversations in the rooms when they're figuring out all this technology. So if we can, if anyone's here that's a part of that, wants to include us, please do. We need to be more in the forefront.
I like it. I like it a lot. Milk, I'd be curious for your thoughts on this as well, similar to Autumn's, because obviously you work in a similar end of things. What are your thoughts on TikTok? Because I feel like it can go either way for people.
I think, what Brooklyn was saying and Autumn is saying, there's like these positives and negatives. I think that the beautiful thing about TikTok is that it challenges, like, someone like me. That's not my natural generation of that platform, but what it has taught me to do is to tell stories in short form. So it really forces me to condense the message I'm saying. Like, what is it that I actually want to offer? I feel like TikTok can be very generous with like the wisdom and like the fun content that there is. And so it pushes me, it challenges me. I do think that the darker side of that is that my art form is songwriting, and I love writing songs. I just absolutely am obsessed. And so the time I'm spending figuring out TikTok is also time that I'm not spending writing my songs. So it's a constant balance of how much do I engage this new world that is blooming and before me. Like Bob Dylan says, it's like either you go with it or you sink like a stone. And so kind of like thinking about how to navigate modernity and also the classic and ancient gifts that come from creating music. The tech side of things, not including artists in that is for me as an artist on a grand scheme, I worry about the level of artistry that is going to be available to us. I think on one end it will help enhance like tech-based artists, like, and artists who can think that way, but what about the other forms, like even thinking about AI art, how you can just type in something and then they're using the paintings of these actual artists who need to make a living, and then they're commodifying that and like blending it into something else without the permission of the artist. It's pretty abrasive. Like, it's kind of like, what kind of society do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a profit-driven society where we have art that's created by machines and tech? Or do we want to empower human beings to be able to tell their stories so we can heal from the traumas that we all endure? Because that's what it's all about. For me personally, I envision a globe filled with people that are able to express their stories, because that is a sign of a human that is not only surviving but thriving. And that's what I want for everyone on the globe. I just hope tech can put aside and kind of realign its values so that we can all thrive.
I hope it does. I really do. What also fascinates me about TikTok is the speed at which people can amass following. I mean, Brooklyn, 10 million followers at this point, somewhere in that realm. It's incredible, and congratulations on it. But also, do you then feel a pressure to like, okay, I have this following now. Now I really need to I need to do the next big thing. I need to keep them like that. I imagine it puts some heaviness on the shoulders of the content creators, of the performers as well.
Oh, 100%. This past year for me was honestly a really big time, where after I had this song and performance art project that I did, which was solely, I didn't know if it was going to go the way that I had planned or be perceived the way that it was, which I was really lucky and grateful that it was, because I just put so much passion, like over a year and a half into this, like a solid year of just work into it, and I loved it. I had so much fun doing it. But then all of my creativity got killed by looking at, what's the next big thing? What's my next big move? Okay, I just did this. How am I going to top this? How do I? And it's really been now, finally, a year after this has happened, I've been able to sit down, take a deep breath, and go, let's just let things flow. Focus on your creativity. Focus on your mental health. And at the end of the day, doing what fulfills you. Because like what you were saying earlier, you can create kind of this computer-based, financial-based gains and just different things like this and push for profit. But you're never going to feel as fulfilled with that at the end of the day. Maybe some people might, but I think you'll never feel truly fulfilled until you're doing something that makes more of a difference.
Absolutely. It just feels like so much pressure. And I truly, and it's been recent too, where I look at content creators, I look at TikTok creators, and I'm like, it seems stressful just all the time thinking about what you need to put out. And obviously that comes with songwriting too, and with score. Like it comes in any kind of creative field. You want to do the next big thing for yourself, but that kind of expedites it. So I've been fascinated watching how TikTok has played in the music industry. I want to move away from TikTok a little bit because Emery, obviously you're an actor as well. Acting and music go hand in hand as well. How has acting helped you in the sense of telling your story? Because you mentioned earlier, it's all very story based. You are very story oriented at all times. So what kind of impact has that had on you as an artist, as a music artist?
I think that acting is a fairly new venture for me. So music was the first pursuit. And the note that I got a lot is that I'm really good at the writing process and being in the studio, and it sounds good, it looks good, but it's not being felt. And there was a disconnect from my performance and my feeling and my body. I wasn't embodied. And maybe, you could chalk that up to lots of things. Maybe in the early part of my career, everything was an audition or a competition or a showcase or something that I didn't want to blow. So there's perfectionism that was, my career was riding on. And then as I got older and I discovered acting is about being available to your emotions at all time and channeling a character and channeling a story and feeling that. And so once I connected that, suddenly I was getting notes that, oh my gosh, we can feel her now. Her stage presence, or even in the studio, it's all connecting. And I think that is, for me, what acting has done to my music.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then as a musician, it's been, oh my gosh, I don't have to choose a career. I can be a musician and I can play a musician on screen. And you don't have to choose between gifts. We're all so multifaceted. And women, we're just, we're the ultimate shapeshifters. We can do it all. So, yeah, they complement.
Yeah, and I love that you are able to do it all. And I agree with you in the sense of like watching artists that are actresses that are music as well. You don't have to pick the one thing. And I feel like realizing that has to be super, super freeing. I'm curious. I actually kind of want to go down the line now because you mentioned getting a note that you can actually feel it. Jermaine, I'll start with you. What is the most impactful note you've gotten in your music career? One that sticks with you, that you still think about, that you're like, okay, this is the note that I like. It's like a guiding light almost.
I would say the note I got from one of my mentors, which was, it's all about the tune. It's all about the tune, because you can write a lot of songs or you can write a lot of score, but have a theme, have a tune that people can hum and that people can enjoy. And that and also going back to that during the whole score through in Canto or others, I have the tune, and that's the genesis, that's the root. But then I'm always constantly expanding that.
That's my favorite thing in a score, guys. I'm gonna nerd out. I'm gonna be that nerdy kid for a little bit, just for a second. In a score, when you hear that recurring theme, when you hear that 4-note progression maybe that just really is in every single one, it is my favorite thing. I encourage you all to listen for it because you will hear it, and it is the most beautiful thing. Okay, I needed to be nerdy for a second. Thank you for indulging me. You didn't have a choice. I have a mic, but thank you anyway. Brooklyn, I want to come to you now. I got a good laugh. Oh, and I'm going to drop things next. Brooklyn, I want to ask you, obviously, very early on in music things, but what has been the most impactful note you've gotten, whether it be for music, whether it be for content creation? What has been the most impactful piece of advice that you have gotten?
I think the most impactful piece of advice, once again, goes back to the creativity and just not taking yourself too seriously, focusing on passion more than like the full seriousness of everything, because otherwise you're going to kill that creativity and kill that love and kill that drive. And that's definitely been the biggest thing for me and something that I'm still working through, and I feel like you work through every day.
Absolutely. Emery, I'm not going to skip you. You just already gave great advice, and I want to go to everyone else, but thank you. Autumn, what has that note been for you when you've been collaborating with everyone that you've collaborated with? What's that note that really stuck in your gut?
So it's going to come from a different point of view, but a note that really stuck with me was someone told me I got word that you were bossy and had a lot of ideas in a session. And I said,
Bye.
Excuse me? It's like, yeah, the producer said you were bossy and had ideas. I was like, I think that's called collaborating and producing. And that's when I realized, do more of it, basically. And when I did more of it, I really came into my power, and I realized the men who told me not to do it wanted to keep me in a specific place that they saw me and that they were comfortable with me staying at. And it was really challenging coming out of that. And then, but once you do, they're gonna say, "We told you so," whatever. But yeah, it was a note that stuck with me, and just to be told, songwriting is so collaborative, and it's so fun, and you think you had a okay day, and then someone's like, "Yeah, I heard you were bossy." You know what I mean? It really stuck with me for a long time. So now I'm just like owning it.
I love it. And Milk, I want to finish up with you. What has been that impactful note for you?
I love all this advice. I'm just collecting it in my little pocket. Thank you. Thank you. The favorite thing I've heard in this for the creative process, and I think this accounts for any type of creativity, is that creativity really thrives in 3 stages. The first is to create like a child. So Brooklyn, when you're talking about like not getting too serious about stuff, that's brilliant, because when we're in like a playful state, and the only way to really get into a playful state is getting out of the head. So that's the first phase, create like a child. And the second phase is to refine like a scientist. So when we're writing music, we're channeling something. I don't believe I'm writing, I believe I'm channeling something that's in the air. And so when I'm really playful, I can channel this pure, raw thing that is offered to me. Then I take my humanness in the second phase and refine whatever that is, like a science. Like I rewrite songs like crazy, but when I'm channeling the song in the first write, it's all flow state. Like Autumn told me, like, don't overthink it, just feel it, just let it come out. Then the third phase, which is the hardest one for me, is to surrender like a warrior and to allow for the art to be out there and to not overthink and just to trust. So that's something I carry with me. I think about that saying, I think every day, actually. Yeah.
Beautiful advice. Again, similar to Milk, I'm just like, I'm going to keep all this in my pocket. Ladies, unfortunately, that is our time. Thank you so very, very much for joining us at the Power Women Summit today. You are all incredible. Yes, let's give it up for them. Thank you all for being here, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the summit. I love and appreciate you. I love and appreciate all of you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.